Hello, Music 47 Modular Synthesis. Trying something a little new here. In this video, I'm going to do a walkthrough of how to generate recordings that you'll use in your sequencing and counterpoint project. This will be in lieu of the sort of basic recipe that I usually add to the assignment instructions. I hope that this video will be helpful and that you can return back to it and review how I patch things up and get some ideas for your own patch, or just do basically the same thing that I do with some different creative choices. Either is up to you. Let's jump right into it. So first, I want to just spend some time listening to the patch that we have going here, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit. So I'm going to click on this sequencer to get it running, and let's just listen at what's happening. So you can hear here that we have two voices, both being run by these different sequencers that we talked about in class. And this is essentially the patch that we're going to build today, or something like it. You'll note that over time, there's some slow, turning it down here just so you can maintain hearing my voice as the filter opens up a little bit. But you'll see there's some LFOs that are causing some slow changes at different rates. Which is letting this little sequencer pattern of two different voices playing together kind of evolve over time and not just be this looping pattern, right? So let's just listen to what these voices are doing individually first, and then bring them back together. So here's voice one. Alright, that's all well and good. And now here's voice two. And again, bring them together. Alright, so the main idea here is that we've set up two different lines that we can change over time that play together. And that's the basis of what we're going to do in this patch. We're going to create some stored melodic information with these sequencers and trigger some notes on two different VCOs. So let's just get everything unpatched and talk about how we did it. So to do that, I'll just select everything, and I can right click and disconnect cables. You can see it's also Control U or Command U if you're on a Mac, I'd imagine. So we'll disconnect all those cables, and now we have ourselves back down to square zero. So if this looks a bit intimidating to you to get set up, you can go ahead and just set up modules as we go here, whatever's helpful for you. But one thing you might notice is that there is a module here, two of them, two copies, that you do not have in the normative VCV set. And this is the Count Modula Gate Modifier, which is a module that I found that does a handy little thing dealing with triggers and gates that we talked about in class, which will allow you to use this trigger output and get some variable gates. Remember, we talked about how gates have kind of a varying amount of time that they can stay on for, right? And so it's a button press, but unlike a trigger, which is just a 1 millisecond button press, you could hold it open and use that sustain function that you see going there. So that's helpful for creating some dynamic lines that have changes in note shape over time, so that you're not just sort of hitting the same kind of sound all the time. The name of the game here is creating musical variation over time. So anyway, enough talking. Let's get the first voice set up. I have an idea. Let's actually just make this even simpler. Let's get rid of everything. So we know that we have the audio module and the recorder module here that we'll need to both hear our audio and record it into WAV files that we can bounce into Audacity. But to assemble our first voice here, let's get started with our good old friend, VCO here, our oscillator. Let's also grab a VCF. That's a filter that we talked about. That'll help just shape the timbre a little bit over time. Remember, we'll talk a little bit more about the ins and outs of filters next week, but for now, just plug it in. It's fun. Let's try it out. So here's our ADSR. That's our envelope. Great. And we're going to be mixing a few different audio sources. So we'll get our VCA mix, right? And just for funsies, I think I might need a VCA. And this is going to allow me to, whatever changes I'm doing in the modulatable parameters here, I can change the depth of that modulation. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So here's our basic first voice. And if we wanted to just patch this up in a simple way as we've been doing, we could take some waveform down here that we like. Let's take a nice rich, timbrely rich waveform here, like a saw wave. And let's go into the filter here. And we'll take it out the low pass input that we've been exploring a little bit. And take that right into the input here. And we know we're going to control the volume of this oscillator as it drones on with this envelope. So we'll put that in CV input 1, right? And that's going to control the volume or the amplitude of whatever signal is going in there, because it's a control input, right? So note that we have a different, this is our sort of main volume button, right? You'll see me messing with this sometimes, but note that if you're recording, it's going to go into here, no matter what you're doing with this, right? Because this cable is not connected there. So just keep that in mind. All right, enough blabbering. Let's hear some sound, right? We'll just make a simple little envelope here, nice and plucky with a very hard attack and a soft release. Maybe not, maybe 15 milliseconds, 17 milliseconds. That sounds good. Sure. Sort of an electric piano sound because we have this filter going on here, right? Could filter out more of those high frequencies if we want, just get kind of a punchy sound. Not much there. But if we open it up all the way, we can hear the full waveform. Nice and buzzy. Let's keep it a little softer for now, just because I think it sounds better. And keep on going. So of course I could sit here and I could press this a lot, and I could get a couple more keyboard mice plugged in and try to move all these with my hands, but that's really not the point of what we're doing here, right? So we're gonna go grab some control sources, and most notably we're gonna grab this sequencer. And then we can grab a few other things that we're going to use with this sequencer. So here's that count modula gate modifier that I talked about. We're going to grab that so we can talk about how to use this if you're so inclined. Not necessary to download this, but if you'd like to, we could go up to the library here and browse VCV library and just search count modula, M-O-D-U-L-A, gate modifier, and you can download that and then update it in your client as long as you're logged in both on the site and in the actual software itself. We're also going to grab a quantizer module, which is going to make it a lot easier for us to shove these CVs into musical notes according to a 12-tone equal tempered scale like we might see in most music, frankly. Like represented as a piano here, right? So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And what else do we need? I think that will be it for now. Just in case, let's go ahead and grab this sequential switch that we talked about a little bit in class that we can use to extend that sequence a little bit. And you know what? I might put it over there, actually. Okay, so this feels good to me. Let's get this clicking along like we talked about in class. So the first thing that I'm going to do is start making the sequencer play the notes for me, which is going to initiate this ADSR just like when I push it, and it's going to raise the volume of this oscillator in a note shape, but it's going to do it for me so I don't have to click all the time. So let's grab this trigger output, and of course I could put it just right in this gate here. And you can hear that we have these little short gates because it's a trigger, right? Even if I can increase the release speed, and that's nice. And this will work for some sounds, this might be all you need. But notice that if I bring the attack speed up beyond the value or how long the trigger is actually staying up, because you'll see this only stays up for a small amount of time. You see it comes on for a very short amount of time. So if I keep doing this, eventually I just lose my note because the trigger is only getting us up to here and then releasing. So not very useful musically. So otherwise, what we can do is use this handy dandy count modulate gate modifier and go into the trigger input here. And we can go from our output here, and this will give us gates. And you can see that with this length knob, I can make that sustain happen. And for most of these notes, for what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it to the fast range, right? Gives me a little more flexibility of musical notes here, right? Note that the length goes up a little slower. Okay, so this feels good to me. I can get those kind of slow attack sounds, those womp, womp, womp. All right, great. And so we have this going. Now, as we talked about on the Seek, we can turn off some of these triggers for the trigger output to create a little rhythm. So the rhythm I'm going to make just for now is maybe we'll just do on, off, off, on, off, off, on, off. And let's hear what that sounds like. Turn the tempo up a little bit. Let's set it actually. Let's put it at 264, which really the tempo I'm trying to represent is 132 here, but it'll be eighth notes. So if you don't know what that means, don't worry, but here's what it's going to sound like. We might make this a little more percussive, this little clave pattern. Great. So now I have this little rhythmic pattern going on, and that's nice enough for me so far, trigger-wise. Let's move on to creating some kind of melodic change. So in order to do that, I'm going to use one of the CV outputs of Sequencer 3, right? So we can just use this first row here, which is represented up here, and we can take this out and put it into my volt per octave input on the VCO. And right now we have our VCO set to middle C, which is just exactly what it sort of ends up on. So if we start setting these offsets, you'll notice that we can set, for example, 1 volt. Oops, sorry. And you see at the beginning of the note, it goes up 1 octave. And we could also take this trigger, which is active, and we could maybe set this to 0.5. And you get that little tritone sound. Okay, cool. So I feel good enough with this for this pattern. That's kind of cool. We can increase the release a little bit to hear the pitch change on some of those notes that aren't being triggered by the envelope. Creates a little bit of an echo effect, very dynamic, and I like it. Now, of course, we used our knowledge of the 1 volt per octave system to set these to notes that were musically related, or 12-tone equal division of the octave related to this VCO here. But a cheat way to do it, maybe, or simply a handy, convenient tool you can use to do that, especially if you are doing something more complicated or want to be able to play with it on the fly, is go through a quantizer. So instead of going straight into my volt per octave here, I'm going to go here. and I'm going to go out and into the volt per octave. Now you'll notice that all of these steps are active. So what I've set is going to remain, right? And we can see that we have a C being played and a tritone or F sharp being played. But if I say just wanted to mess with some of these values and make sure that they came out in the notes that I wanted, I could use this to scoot things up. So what happens when I just take away this tritone here? So what that quantizer is doing is when it receives a value that normally would go there, it's going to just squash it down. It's only going to allow pitches to be squished into these little divisions of volts between the octave to create these pitch relationships. And of course, if I opened up these and added some different values, and then maybe made it a little less chromatic, like what if I just used the white notes here? You can really get dynamic. So that's nice and fun. I like this here. Let's go back to our rhythm we had. I like those little ghost notes in there, so we'll keep that. And yeah, let's go on to our next step. So the next step is creating some long form changes in this sequence, right? So the way that I might want to do that is with something like an LFO, right? So let's grab one of those. So this LFO is going to allow me to change some parameter very slowly over time. But I actually want to do more than just that. I actually want to be able to use this VCA to change how much it is changing something, right? So let's turn this down just a little bit. Notice how immediately grating things can be when they are just running forever. Okay, so let's mess with some of this filter setting, right? So for now, I might take this, well, let's try the saw wave. And let's go into the filter cutoff. Now, we already heard how this big cutoff button can really affect the sound, right? Taking those high notes out. And we can see where there's kind of like a sweet spot here where there's a lot of change and there's like less change down here, right? So if we think about how this voltage is going to work, right? When this LFO goes high, when its sawtooth wave goes up, it's going to change this knob and push it up based on the amount of percentage that we supply here. Right? Note that opening up this cutoff really makes the sound a lot louder, right? And that's because of the way our ears hear high and low sounds in this logarithmic kind of fashion. So just something to think about. It'll kind of become more present. Now, I'm going to make this a little more subtle because I don't really like that strong drop off. So how about we just do a triangle wave? Now we got some change going on in that sound, right? We can add a little more change maybe by duplicating this VCO and moving it down here. And we might do a little bit of FM stuff. So let's turn this off for now. Let's grab a sine wave. Why not? And we'll put it in here, the channel input of this VCA. and we're going to modulate the FM of the oscillator that we're listening to here. So we'll go into the FM there. And we'll use this as our main control. So let's just go ahead and use 100% modulation there. Right? Now with this CV input, I can change how much this is being modulated with another signal, right? So let's get another LFO. I know, we're getting crazy here. And let's get a triangle wave. And let's set this level somewhere like this. And you'll see that this rate will go up and down all the way up to whatever the top point that I set is. Now let's hear how this is affecting the sound. A little less pretty, a little more jarring maybe. So let's try linear. A little more tuneful. Now you'll notice that because we have two things that are both affecting the speed, or sorry, the timbre at different rates, you're going to get different combinations of these levels over time, which is going to create some really dynamic changes just built into the system. So you can mess around with this for a while and use it to record your first line. So we're going to, for example, well, I'll just do it, why not? So as we know, we can go ahead and click run here to turn our sequencer off, and we won't have anything happening, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click record here in a second, and I'm going to record basically me performing with the various tools that we've set up here. So what you want to think about is, what are the things that I can vary? What are the parameters that I've set up in my patch that I can change to get some variation of the timbre or the speed or the rhythm or what have you? And there's a whole lot of stuff down there, and it's up to you. So you can change the rhythm over time here by initiating and uninitiating different steps. I can mess with the note content over here over time. I could, of course, take this gate, change the length, change my envelope shape here. You could do a number of things, right? Let's actually get some of that sequenced. So let's take this here, this CV2, and let's go into the release. And this is going to allow me to open up and close the release of the ADSR to make the notes different lengths. And what I can do here is really accentuate the notes that I want to rhythmically by making them longer and more pronounced. So I can do this, and I'll do this, right? So let's hear that. Okay, cool. So we have a little bit of change going on there, as you can see. And what I'll do now is just record a little bit of me messing with this. And we're going to use what we record as some material to work with when you compose your piece in Audacity. So let's do that. So I'll click record here. And I've already been using this session, so it's recording into something. Now I might stop this so I get a good start to my note as I've set it up and reset. And I'll have some fluff at the beginning of this recording, but that's fine. So let's open this up so we can hear it. And just do a little performing. I'll be quick about this, but you might want to go for a little bit and really find something that you like. Nice. Okay, well, I liked that. So we'll click record here, and we know that that's been recorded somewhere else. So we'll go grab that later, but for now, let's make another line to go with that line. So there's two ways to do this. So of course, we could just keep messing with this patch and create some things that are in the same tempo and just keep making some different recordings and line them up in Audacity. But what I'm going to show you is actually how to basically copy everything we have so far and make two different voices so we can improvise with using the system and actually recording both changing together. So let's do exactly that. Let's copy over, we're not using this yet, so but whatever, let's just copy everything. We won't need another, oh, you really? Okay. So we'll duplicate that and bring that over here. And we'll take this, this, move that over there, and then let's get just another one of these. Maybe we could take this LFO down here. Yeah. You can feel free to be as crazy as you want with organization. I like getting organized here. Okay, and we'll duplicate all of this over. And look at that. Now we got this big honking modular synthesizer. Awesome. So what I'm going to do is just basically repatch the same kind of ideas that we did here. So let's walk through it again. So I'm going to take a drink and we'll get all the way through it. Okay. So let's do some variation. Let's use a triangle wave here instead. And we'll actually use this one as our main voice and this one as our modulator. So we'll take our triangle out. Now, the triangle wave itself is very simple, but and generally you don't want to pass it into a low pass filter. You're not going to get a lot of change going there. We can hear if we do this, you do get some stuff, but it's not quite as rich or extreme as with the saw wave. But we're going to be using some FM, so the tones are definitely going to be coming out of here much more complex than what we're hearing right now. So we'll go ahead and keep this going, and of course control it with our ADSR over here. So, right, beautiful, beautiful. And we can get our little FM patch going with maybe another triangle wave in here and out into the FM. And we need some more LFOs. So here's one down here. We can maybe use a sine wave to affect this. And we can see both of those sort of dance around. Nice and fun. Let's getting some different kind of harmonic sounds out of there. Right, okay, great. And let's set up some more kind of slow modulation. So we already have some LFOs over here, and as long as we attach them to different things, maybe use a different waveform, you know, we can still get a lot of different change, and it'll actually, you know, sort of correspond our changes musically one to another. But one thing you might not want to do is like control both of the filters with the same LFO, because that'll get, you know, not as many kind of interesting combinations going here. So instead I'm going to take the one that's controlling the FM over here, and I'll control the LFO with that. Or sorry, the filter cutoff. And here I'll use this to control, something else, I don't know. How about this? How about I take another VCA? Now bear with me here, we're gonna get crazy. And I'm going to actually affect the oscillator we're not listening to, but is FMing this one that we are listening to. I'm going to FM it with the one that we're listening to. So let's go do the same sort of thing we had here and go into the FM input. And I'll attach this to this guy. So now we can have some really complex patching, some feedback patching, in which both of these oscillators are messing with each other. And that can create some really complex and sort of dynamic changes, which I really like. Okay, so wonderful. Let's yeah, that's all fun. Okay, so let's get the sequencer going. So here, let's use this sequential switch a little bit, right? So we talked about this first. Oh, well, okay, sorry. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's get our trigger sequencer going. So I'm just going to create a random rhythm here. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. Great. Take my trigger out and go into this gate modifier by count modulate and output it to the gate input on my ADSR. And this isn't running, of course, but I could run it. That's all well and good. And one thing that I know I want to do is I want these to run in unison to one another, right? So I want to be able to take this clock output and put it into the clock input so that they're always linked, right? And similarly, I want to be able to, run both at the same time. Well, actually, I might want to run them independently, so I won't connect that. But I might want them to reset individually so that I can just press one button and they'll both reset to the first value, if you don't know what that means. So now we can run these and hopefully hear both of these going. Oh, right. Forgot I didn't connect these runs. So now you see that we have some stuff going already that's, pretty dynamic, and we have a lot to play with. I know this looks maybe confusing, but hopefully, because we built it from square one, you can kind of go back and find, oh, what knob does that thing, right? Okay, so let's talk about using this sequential switch, right? Because we want to get these notes changing to get some counterpoint. That's kind of funny. Okay, let's take this CV1, 2, and 3, and let's put them into this sequential switch. Input 1, input 2, and input 3. Now what this sequential switch is going to do is it's actually going to act just like our sequencer over here, in that when it receives a clock input, it will click through these different CV values. The only difference is you're actually sending a CV in instead of just setting it with a knob offset, right? And that'll all come out this output. So why would I do this, right? We'll put it into our quantizer and out to our note here, the one we're listening to. And we're going to use the step 1 output to advance the clock. And what this is going to mean is that every time we arrive at step 1, it's going to go to the next line, right? So we actually have a 24-step sequencer here. And we can get a really long sort of pattern. Let's listen to just that. Note that if you wanted to, you could do this with 3 different LFOs, or through multiple sequencer trigger outputs. You could do it with any kind of input. It doesn't have to be from the sequencer here. It could just be anything. But yeah, so now we got this nice long sequence, and let's just add a little bit more modulation like we did to the other patch, and then we'll make another recording that has both of these in it. So just adding some modulation here. Maybe I'll take this guy and I'll use it to control the release here. And that'll just give some more change. Now, one thing I didn't think about so far is this VCO. Now, we have both of the VCOs that we're listening to set to the same kind of frequency range, right? And that's, fine, but I think it might be a little more interesting to have some registral difference, have kind of a bass line and a top line, if you will. So let's set this to just, twice of what that is. So that's middle C. So if we were to double this, it would be 522-ish, 523. That's in tune enough for synthesis, I think. Of course, if we wanted to add a little bit of extra tuning, it's a little dangerous with the amount of FM we've got going here, but we could take this sync. We could take the square output of here and put it into the sync. Oh, my mistake. You usually want to use the lower tone to force it in there, so we'll go the opposite way. Get some interesting stuff going on there, I think. So let's make another recording. So one thing that we can do here is, we could try to create just some panning stuff, right? So the last recording that we did was just mono, right? It was all in the middle. But here, if we wanted to, we could actually take these independent output channels and record a very stereoized kind of thing with one thing on the left and one thing on the right. So let's hear what that sounds like if I do the same thing through what we're listening on right here. Kind of floats around your ears a little bit, and that's fun. Really draws out sort of how these different lines are related. Okay, so in order to record something like this, of course, we just repeat the same process that we did last time. Double these, go over here and make it record. And of course, what we want to do is now just mess around a little bit and get some different sounds out of these things. So I'm just gonna have fun for a little bit, and we'll wrap this up. But you can be creative as long as you want, of course. You wanna have some fun, really find some interesting stuff. So that'll be my recording there. Just a little fun thing, and then we can stop it. Okay, so this is the basic kind of recipe for creating the types of sounds that I'm imagining that you'll use to create this idea of counterpoint. Two different lines interacting together with kind of rhythmic difference. So I'm going to stop recording and then open up another one in Audacity and just show you a little bit about how to put these things together to just make your little etude. Great, thanks. Okay, everybody. Here we are in Audacity. We've just recorded some counterpoint sequencer lines at the same tempo. You may have some more recordings than we just did, and I encourage you to. But for now, we're just going to work with the two that I made to demonstrate sort of this basic way. So the first place to start, of course, is bouncing those recordings into Audacity so that we can manipulate them in our composition. So let's go to import audio, and I'm going to go to my documents and go to Rack 2 recordings, and you can see here I have my two recordings. So I'll just bring both of those in. Okay, maybe it won't work like that. Okay, bring both of those in, and you can see we have this now. So I know that this is unnecessary fluff at the beginning. Alright, so here's our two little things, and we can listen to them here if we want to. Doop. Okay, so what we're going to do is basically first make sure that we rhythmically align these two things, because they're clicking along at the same tempo, right? So we should be able to just align them as we sort of make our piece out of these recorded materials, right? So let's unsolo this. And doesn't sound too far off. Basically what we want to do, stop it for now, we'll go to the beginning and just listen for what feels like the start of a pattern here, right? And find that. So let's actually solo this again. And so I feel like just right here is a good start of the pattern. So if I zoom in on this, what I can do is I can just go ahead and take off this fluff and zoom in even further. Just get right to the start of that. And you can see it's actually pretty lined up here, but not perfectly. So let's zoom out again, and let's do the same thing here. Right up to the beginning of that waveform, so we can line these up. Alright, so these are nice and lined up. Let's just hear what it sounds like now. It looks like we actually happened to record for the same amount of time, pretty much. So let's just hear what we have just with these together. Okay, so just purely accidentally, I happen to have recorded things that kind of line up well together, right? There's this ending sort of gesture here that I think is really nice. We're under 2 minutes, and we were able to fit these together. Also notice that since I recorded this first one as a mono track, and these other two as strictly either one voice in the left and one voice in the right, I now have 3 voices all at different stereo positions. So that also will sort of take care of that one stipulation of our assignment, right? So you'll see that basically what I have done in this recipe is spend a lot of time in VCV on making a recording that's really musical and has some dynamics and development to it, as opposed to, you know, really thinking in pieces and then assembling. Either way works, and whatever, you know, works best for you and helps you achieve the kind of sounds you're going for is totally valid. But I think this way is a good way to just sort of do a lot of the work up front in the recording and then not have to do so much work afterwards. So let's grab both of these. Let's grab both of these. Can I? Come on now. There we go. And let's just offset them a little bit so that they don't start right at the beginning. And I am going to add just a little bit of dynamics, right? So I have this middle voice turned up, and it's kind of my main voice. I've turned it up about 5 dB, so it's about almost 2 times louder than I recorded it at. And you can see sort of at our loudest point, maybe about here, if we play it, we have a peak-to-peak level around -6 dB, and that works for me. I'm good with it. So what I'm going to do now is just add a little bit of change in this envelope so that the presence of either of these voices changes over time. And at first, I'll have it where this middle voice, the thing that's right in the center of the stereo range, is more prominent. And then as it gets a little simpler down here, I'll have this come out a little bit. So let's see how I do that. So first we're going to stop it and grab our envelope tool, of course. And I'm just going to make some simple kind of lines, right? So it's going to be for about 30 seconds. It's going to slowly kind of go down a little bit. And then around here, it's really going to go down and really give some space for the stuff on the outside. But for this final gesture, I want it to kind of quickly come back. So let's just try something like this. And then we'll make this reflect that, right? A little bit. Don't have to go too crazy, but okay, come on now, Audacity. Yep. There we go, something like that. And that'll just create a little bit of dynamics. So let's just listen to that real quick. So I might want to take this up a little bit more. Might have been a little bit too drastic with that. So I'll just adjust that here. And of course, you know, in your project, you may really do this to the nth degree and really, you know, create a lot of variation. But this is just a sort of a simple way than just as a demonstration, right? So here, you know, we've got a good sound volume. We've done some work in VCV to make sure we really got some creativity and development happening in this counterpoint. We make sure that we have some stereo information, right? Which normally if we just had mono tracks, we might be using the stereo panning over here on each track to change. But because we have one stereo track, which is so dynamically different in the left and right channels, that kind of takes care of that for us. And we know that we're under 2 minutes. So what are we going to do here? Now we're going to export, right? So what we'll do is just go to File and Export. Export as WAV, of course. And we're going to call this, I believe, sequencer counterpoint. If this name is wrong from what I said in the assignment, I'm sorry. Then your name, right, which is first and last name. Just do whichever one is actually in the assignment. If I did it wrong and I'm being dumb. Great. And we'll save that there. It's going to be mixed down and exported as one stereo file. That's perfect for us. And we don't need to add all this. And we're good. Now the last step, of course, might be you might want to actually look at the file that you've created. So we can go ahead and save this project just in case we want to come back to it. Save project. Saving the project, not the audio file. Yes, yes, yes. Sure, we'll just save it in the same file. That's fine. And now, because I have it saved, these don't matter. And let's import the file that we made. So import audio. And I believe this is, where is it? That's the one. Open it. No. Oh, there we go. And look at that. Nice big juicy waveform that we can listen to. Let's hear the final result. Okay, so video is already running super long, so thanks for sticking with us. I'll stop it there. Good luck, have fun, you know, explore, find some new sounds. Hopefully this style of recipe is useful to you. We'll talk more about it next week. Thanks so much.